Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. I actually recorded the show last night. We had that same corruption issue. So here we are again, take two of your weekend Boneyard. A lot to discuss, a pretty wild day on Friday. We got, obviously, Jordan Seaton commits to LSU. Not the result we wanted. Proud of the effort. We'll talk some about that later in the show. And, of course, Mississippi State taking on Vanderbilt in brunch basketball today. So we'll record this show in two segments. This is being recorded now ahead of the game, so we'll get this done, get through our top 10 list. We'll come back after the basketball game, and we'll recap what happened between the Bulldogs and the Commodores. So obviously I want to watch that. So you'll have this show, and then we'll be back on schedule next week. But yeah, a lot of good things happening, but the most important thing is, man, I hope you guys are safe wherever you are today. Already getting some severe ice in extreme north Mississippi. So far in the greater Starkville area, we have not had any precipitation. That's expected to happen at some point during the game. Thankfully, the bride going to come on home early afternoon so we can kind of ride this thing out, and we'll see what things look like tomorrow. But most importantly, I just hope that you guys have taken precautions. Also, to any outside animals you have, I hope that you've taken precautions for them as well. As you guys are well aware, yes, they are animals, but they need to be protected as well. But best of luck to all of you. We obviously have taken some precautions here, even though the conditions are not expected to be quite as extreme in the greater Starkville area. Who knows what's going to happen? We don't have to deal with this stuff very often, but there's going to be some very real situations that take place throughout the weekend. So please do not put yourself in harm's way. Do not travel unless you absolutely have to, and if you do, please take extreme care as you travel. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. Man, we love Bulldog Burger Company. I could eat Bulldog Burger Company several times a week. I could. Just because the diversity of the menu. Not to mention, I need all the spring rolls I can get because they make you better looking. That's how I've maintained this youthful exuberance all these years. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Richmond, Flowood area. Have your own favorites. Find them. The pimentology ad bacon is probably my favorite. I don't even like pimento and cheese sandwiches, but I love that pimento spread at Bulldog Burger Company. It's just kind of a weird thing. I never thought I'd like it. I absolutely love it. I like the Bryant, the Lauren, the Freshman 15. There's so many things on that menu that satisfy me, and I suspect that's the case for you as well. Get that chocolate shake to go. You can ride that ride home with a smile. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. We start this show with arguably the biggest story in college sports right now, and it just so happens to involve Ole Miss. So I don't want people to think I'm just jumping on this because it's Ole Miss, but because it's a precedent-setting situation that may bring a real change as how we determine what is fair and is unfair when it comes to transfer portal recruiting. So let me catch you up if you don't already know. I had somebody ask me on the message board, I guess a week or so ago. They kind of foresaw this thing happening and said, hey, Steve, what do you think about this? I had not really read up on it. We've been so busy covering everything going on with us. But there is a situation between Clemson and Ole Miss. Maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't. But essentially, Clemson signs former Cal linebacker Luke Farrelly. Right? Everything is great. He signs in. He moves to Clemson. He begins off-season conditioning. He begins class. And despite the fact that he is on Clemson's campus and attending class, Ole Miss continues to recruit him. Now, we have to determine the legalities of all of this. And the court systems have tried to help us, I guess, in some respect. And I use that in Dr. Evil quotes because I think some of this court stuff has just created a bigger mess than it's prevented. But Deborah Sweeney had a press conference on Friday and kind of specifically went through the timeline of all of this. And it's disturbing, not just because it's Ole Miss, and the fleas always find the dog, don't get me wrong. If anybody out there is pushing the envelope, it's just going to be Ole Miss. But anyway, so they find out, Clemson finds out, that Luke Farrelly is still being recruited by Ole Miss. And so anyway, according to Sweeney, Pete Golding himself texted Farrelly and said, I know you're signed, but what's the buyout? Now, reading up on this, some Ole Miss people have said, well, he didn't have a signed rev share agreement. And I don't think that factors into this at all. What they elected to do about 2 years ago is to bring some finality to the portal recruiting process. They allowed student athletes to sign the financial aid agreement. And basically, it replaces the old national letter of intent. So the understanding, the rules that are in place is that when everybody signs the FAA, the player is no longer a recruitable athlete. Now, let's go back a little bit to Tyler Lockhart's situation, right? Remember that? Tyler Lockhart from Winona announces for Ole Miss at a school press conference. Ole Miss does not get a signed agreement. There was all this discussion that, the mom didn't want him going to Ole Miss, wanted her sons together, and that she refused to sign. Well, Ole Miss never files him as a signed student athlete. Mississippi State is able to get the signed document executed, and then State snakes him at the end, right? They get him. He's still here. Of course, there was all these people with sources that said he'll just go in the spring portal and go to Ole Miss, which is where he's always wanted to be anyway, which wouldn't, didn't work out that way. Completely different scenario, because Tyler Lockhart was not a signed student athlete by Ole Miss. He was a committed athlete. He wasn't signed. Luke Farrelly was a signed athlete. Clemson gets word of all this. They reach out to Ole Miss and said, hey, and here's a quote from Sweeney. The general manager, who, if memory serves me correct, is Austin Thomas. Yeah, Austin Thomas at Ole Miss. Here's from Clemson. And Austin Thomas allegedly assured Jordan, who's a staffer at Clemson, that he had communicated with the agent, that he wanted no part of this, and his relationship with Jordan was more important to him than Luke Farrelly, but that, quote, Pete Golding just does what he does, end of quote. Not exactly sure what that means. Now, as the article goes on and Sweeney's press conference moves forward, and you can watch this press conference online, said that Golding had texted Farrelly to ask about the buyout and offer him $1 million contract. And that some people connected to Ole Miss reached out to Farrelly to try to aid in the Rebels' recruitment of him. Another quote, Sorrells met Luke face-to-face, Luke Farrelly, Sorrells, another Clemson staffer, in his office, and that Luke Farrelly communicated to Jordan and Ben Boulware, another Clemson staffer, that Pete had texted him on Wednesday morning, the head coach at Ole Miss, when he was in his 8 a.m. class. He said the text message said, I know you're signed, what's the buyout? And Luke said that Coach Golding texted a picture of $1 million contract. Luke also mentioned to Jordan and to Ben that Coach Golding had Trinidad Chambliss call him from his phone, and that Coach Golding was there continuing to talk on his phone to push him to re-enter the transfer portal. He also said that Jackson Dart had reached out and called him, but Luke assured Jordan he had no intention of leaving, end of quote. Now, Trinidad Chambliss obviously is a player that has captivated a nation in many respects, and so he's a known commodity, just like Camario Taylor is. And all these guys are involved with recruitment of other portal players. Well, Jackson Dart is an alum, but he's still considered a booster, or in NCAA legalese, a representative of the university's athletics interest. That is a violation. That is a violation for an alum, a donor, a booster, to try to influence the decision of a recruit. We went through that in the Jackie Sherrill era. We have some recruits at an event. Johnny Cooks just happens to be there and says hello, and it was mentioned in our notice of allegations. Now, is it a major violation? No. But it's still improper. As we push this thing forward, basically, towards the end of the portal, Luke Farrelly re-enters the portal and then signs with Ole Miss and moves to Oxford. Now, of course, Ole Miss has spent the better part of a month making accusations that Lane Kiffin and LSU have targeted and tampered with their roster. And based on what we've seen and know, there's probably some substance to that allegation, right? I think we would all agree. Surely Lane Kiffin and or people connected to him were trying to get Ole Miss players to transfer to Baton Rouge. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't know that we could prove that, but I think most of us believe that. And so Pete Golding then has this exchange with Luke Farrelly and ultimately wins. And so Swinney says this: it's total hypocrisy because all this is going on while they on the other side are trying to fight their defensive end from going to the portal. That's Princewell, you and not Nayland. They've accused publicly others of tampering with their roster and their players while they are over here tampering. This is just a really sad state of affairs, and it's, to me, we have a broken system. If there are no consequences for tampering, then we have no rules, we have no governance. This is not about a linebacker at Clemson. I feel sorry for the young man, to be honest with you. I blame the adults. If you want to have adult world, then there needs to be adult consequences, end of quote. So there's a lot more to his comments. You ever Googled yourself? You may be alarmed to note exactly how much of your private information and data is out there for anybody to access. Whether it be your phone number, your home address, or details about your family. It could be your kids' names, their ages. Whether you agree to this disclosure or not. And that's because data brokers are collecting and selling your information to marketers, scammers, and basically anyone willing to pay. It's the reason robocallers know your name and while ads seem to follow you on every digital platform out there. Well, Aura fights back for you. They remove your personal data from broker sites and keep it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a data breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just data broker removal. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your life online. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager to keep all your logins safe. And they even give you spam call protection to cut off those stupid scammers. Aura also scans the dark web regularly for your most sensitive information like your social security number, bank logins, passwords, and they will notify you instantly if you are somehow exposed. If your identity is ever stolen, you're backed up by up to $5 million in insurance and 24/7 U.S.-based fraud support to help you recover everything quickly. Other services charge about the same, but they only cover one or two areas. With Aura, you get it all. Data broker removal, credit and identity monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all with one simple app. Aura removes what is already exposed, protects what isn't, and puts you back in control. Right now, you can try Aura free for 14 days when you visit aura.com/remove. That gives them plenty of time to go ahead and start protecting your data. They can remove your personal information from data broker sites. Sign up today at aura.com/remove and get the peace of mind that your privacy, identity, and finances are all safeguarded. That's Aura, aura.com/remove. Certain terms and conditions apply. Be sure and check it out today at aura.com. You can find those, and again, you can watch that press conference. And so here's my take on this. Forget the Ole Miss angle. Obviously, a lot of Mississippi State people are going to root, against Ole Miss here. I mean, it's just the nature of a rivalry. At its core, we have one school who signs and enrolls a player and has him facilitating in workouts and classes. So at what point is the recruiting process over? And this is going to be a precedent-setting moment in how we govern the transfer portal recruiting process. Now, according to Sweeney, he spoke to his athletic director, who also spoke at the conference. They've spoken to the ACC commissioner. Apparently, information's been forwarded on to the Southeastern Conference and Greg Sankey. And, basically, Ole Miss is out here basically recruiting a player that should be considered off limits. And I'm sure they're not alone, right? Now, a lot of people say, hey, well, we've had guys in the past that have, quote, signed. Signing a NIL contract is not the same as the FAA. And I think maybe that's where we are now. Maybe we need to find a way to streamline that process and say, hey, this is a binding agreement, period. Not everybody that signs a scholarship or a financial aid agreement gets rev share or NIL. But there has to be some type of standardization in all this stuff that prevents these kinds of things from happening. I think everybody would agree we have to have some rules, and we've basically lived in the Wild Wild West. If the NCAA doesn't act here, and there have already been people that have said they've reached out to the NCAA and gotten comment, they're not going to give you anything. They're going to just tell you, yes, we're going to thoroughly evaluate this, and we have no further comment. That's what they're going to do. Standard boilerplate type stuff. But if this is not handled, then next year in the portal, because the portal's closed now, next year, everybody's going to do this. At some point, your yay has to be yay and your nay has to be nay. At some point, that has to happen. At some point, we have to have some finality to process. And the schools have to have a sense of security to know, hey, this guy's here for a year. Good, bad, or indifferent, he's here. Now, the other side of this is, I don't know that you can't make Luke Farrelly go back to Clemson, right? We live in a free society. But you can sanction Ole Miss. Now, the legalities of that is something that will be debated and possibly litigated. And when I go back to the core of this thing, when Ole Miss knows he's signed, and according to the messages that Dabo Swinney referenced, Pete Golding starts with, I know you're signed. But what's the buyout? Is that what we want to do? Right? So if in the event that a player is signed and still recruitable, at what point does anybody ever have a sense of commitment and a sense of safety to say, hey, this process is over? That's a real question. And again, as scandalous as this seems, I think it's a good thing in some respects because of the fact I think this will bring some meaningful change. And here we were thinking, hey, when somebody signs the FAA, they're off limits. But Luke Farrelly's at Ole Miss, right? So what options does the NCAA have? Well, they could rule Luke Farrelly ineligible for the year. They could. That's a scenario. And they could certainly sanction Ole Miss for tampering. And that's the thing. Everybody talks about tampering. And Sweeney kind of broke it down, I thought, probably as succinctly as anybody can. And he shares, like tampering 101. It's like reaching out to, talking to a kid's agent or something like that. And, the agent's like, hey, if this guy goes in the portal, would you be interested? So you've got contact with them. He said, like tampering 201 is to already have the deal done, like before the kid even goes in the portal. That happens too. You guys are well aware of that. You see it all the time. Guys go in the portal and then immediately announce their commitment to no school. Well, that didn't just happen in a couple of hours. It's something the agent's been working on for some time. And then there's this. Right? And what's interesting, too, is the agent, according to Sweeney, said, I'll get him to stick with Clemson if you guys give us another year. If you give us $2 million. Give us a 2-year deal, $1 million per. So the agent's not blameless here either. Not to mention, the agent knew that Luke Farrelly had already signed an agreement with Clemson. and then continued to field overtures from Ole Miss. And this isn't an Ole Miss issue. This particular incident is. There's just a bigger issue here when it comes to governance of the recruiting process. And that's the thing when I go back to this. If this is allowed to stand, we have not even begun to see the true chaos that could emerge next portal season. Like, we can't even fathom that. At what point is it truly over? Because you don't have a spring transfer portal anymore. Do you have a situation where a player could sign with Mississippi State and even go through spring practice, and then all of a sudden another school says, well, hey, transfer to us at the end of the year or end of the semester? And maybe not within the Southeastern Conference, because we do have some rules and parameters that prevent intra-conference transfers that without eligibility, right? Like, that's how it used to be. You couldn't transfer in the spring portal and play in the SEC from one school to the other. You had to do it in December. But what's to stop Louisville or North Carolina State? This could be a very slippery slope for all involved. You begin to think about Charlie Winfield and Terry Prentice and everybody involved in a situation, just kind of working through, and you get these deals done, and you sit down with people and everybody shakes hands, and you feel like, okay, great, this is where we stand. This is who we have. Let's get into spring practice and put a team together and see if we can't go post a winning season next year. Only to find out that none of it matters. The money doesn't matter. The contract doesn't matter. The FAA doesn't matter. That's where we're headed if this isn't resolved. And some people have said, well, the NCAA is toothless and powerless. In many respects, when it comes to a lot of these eligibility cases, they have to depend on the ruling of a court. And contrary to popular belief, they've actually had greater success in eligibility cases than just about anything else. So maybe, again, Luke Farrelly, you rule him ineligible because there's been a violation of the current rules. And everybody agreed to the rules before this process started. Everybody involved in the NCAA, everybody at the school level, from an administrative level, a coaching level, a staffing level, everybody has to go through an NCAA basically compliance course every single year. And everybody has to sign off saying, okay, I understand these are the rules. I agree to them. This is a voluntary organization. I will abide by the rules in place. The rules were already in place that everybody agreed to. And then now we're violating them. So I suspect if you make Luke Farrelly ineligible for the 2026 season, there'll be obviously a legal challenge, and there'll be a TRO, and they'll probably let him play in a game or whatever until they can get an injunction or something like that. And I don't know if that's worth pursuing. I think what you have to do is you have to punish the school. This, to me, based on what I understand about the rules and about the FAA, this is a very blatant attempt at tampering. And it was very successful. Now, some Ole Miss people have come out and said, well, the game is all past Dabo Swinney by. And he has been a very reluctant participant in the portal process. Everybody sees that. Everybody knows that. It's not something that hasn't been well documented. Everybody understands that Dabo Swinney has kind of been anti-portal. And you know what? It's shown on the football field, right? Because Clemson really hadn't been Clemson for a while. Obviously, they were a mainstay at a national championship, and now all of a sudden the portal comes along. They don't embrace the portal. He just kind of continues to do things the way he's always done, and people are like, oh, the game has passed him by. I don't know that that's true. I think that's just something that sounds good, because this is a scenario where Dabo Swinney says, okay, listen, we got to go sign some portal guys, and then they do, and they go by the letter of the law, and then the player is poached from their roster. I think Dabo Swinney and Clemson have a legit beef here. And if you read the national narrative on this, I think the only people out there that are truly defending the Ole Miss side are Ole Miss people. And I think most of them at their core understand this is wrong. They're just hoping they're not going to be sanctioned for it or penalized for it. And I think they should be. Not just because they're Ole Miss, but because of the fact it sets a precedent. If you do this, These are the sanctions. This is the problem. Let's go back a few years, and maybe you recall when Ole Miss basically recruited two different players off Mississippi State's roster back in 2020. Fabian Lovett, Jerry Jones. Fabian had already declared his intention to transfer, right? Jerry Jones had not. Ole Miss was later sanctioned by the Southeastern Conference for this. And, of course, Lovett and Jerry and Jones, though signing with Ole Miss, ended up going to Florida State, right? And so you may recall there was some sanctions. And the Ole Miss people were very quiet about it until Malik Heath elected to transfer to Ole Miss. Now, what's interesting about that, too, some would say, well, they stole him from us. No, Malik was done here at Mississippi State. He was finished. Went through senior day. A lot of discussion about him going pro. Has a car accident. A little bit banged up for a while. Kind of misses the window. And then elects to transfer. So, in no way am I alleging that Ole Miss tampered with Malik Heath. Malik Heath was finished here. Okay, and he went up there and he had a good year. And you know what? It worked out for him. But Malik Heath couldn't enroll till post-spring. And a lot of people forget that. And the reason they couldn't is because Ole Miss had been prohibited from signing transfers from Mississippi State for a couple years. True. So this is not a situation where Ole Miss hasn't done this sort of thing before. I just think this time they're a little more brazen with it. And the fact that the head coach is involved, I think is very interesting. It wasn't a low-level staffer. It wasn't a position coach. It wasn't a recruiting analyst. If Sweeney is to be believed, it's Pete Golding, the head coach himself, text Luke Ferrelli. And Luke Ferrelli, in his conversations with Clemson, identified Golding as the person. So I don't know how this thing is going to resolve itself, but it is important that something changes one way or the other in this scenario. Period. Because as this thing continues to evolve, it's just going to encourage other people. It's like, hey, well, we missed out on this guy and this guy and this guy. Well, what about so-and-so? Oh, well, he enrolled at Vanderbilt. Well, reach out to him and see what's the buyout in that contract. There have got to be some guardrails here. There have to be. And I think there have to be some penalties here for Ole Miss. And you know what? For that matter, too, if it can be proven that LSU and Lane Kiffin's staff did things that were untoward and tampered with the Ole Miss roster, they should be sanctioned too. Anybody involved in this that has openly tampered with players should be punished. I just think this scenario with LSU and Ole Miss is a lot different than the Ole Miss Clemson situation, right? Number one, you had the LSU coaches, Charlie Weiss and those guys. You had a lot of those guys still in your building. You're just kind of asking for trouble, and I get it. You're trying to navigate through this and give yourself the best chance to win. Well, there's a trade-off for that, right? And Lane Kiffin and that staff had pre-existing relationships with those players. And there's a lot of players that follow coaches when they make coaching changes. It happens. We see it in baseball, right? Brian O'Connor brought some of the best players from Virginia here. That's to be expected. But obviously, Ole Miss people feel like, hey, Lane Kiffin and those guys contacted everybody on the roster. I don't believe that. But I do believe there probably was some contact. But this is a different situation. And again, if Kiffin and those guys are guilty, sanction them. Do it. But to go and contact a guy that's not one of your players, that didn't play for you, that's already enrolled on campus in an apartment, attending class, going through workout, that to me, that's the horse of a different color. And the principle may be the same. The details are much, much, much darker in this scenario. And I think we all agree that the portal in many respects has been kind of a drain on the enthusiasm of fans. Yeah, we loved the incoming traffic, and Mississippi State was very fortunate this year. We just didn't have much production in the outbound lane. But a lot of people have just said, I'm just going to check out on this. They'll comment on your Facebook, hey, welcome, congratulations to this guy, but they're not emotionally invested in that. This is something that I think everybody in college football can for the most part, agree on. We have to have some law. We have to have some regulation. We have to have a situation where schools are protected from potential poachers after they get a player on campus. And the fact that people can argue against that tells me that we really want a society of lawlessness when it comes to college football. We think we should be able to, as long as we have more money than you, we should do what we want. And that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. And I think most solid-minded people would agree that that's not how things should work. So, NCAA has been involved in all this, and I'm sure they'll investigate. I'm sure that the SEC office is involved in all this, as you guys are well aware. But if I'm Mark Keenum and the rest of these university presidents, I'm on the Zoom call with Sankey and says, this can't happen. This absolutely cannot happen. We cannot allow these things to happen. We can't conduct ourselves in such a way where there's never any finality to the portal recruiting process. And that was one of the things that we asked for some time. And I remember when Marcus Banks was planning to move here, Miami was still trying to get him. And until he got here, right, it wasn't, quote, officially over. In the mind of Marcus Banks, it was over, right, because he's packed a U-Haul and his family's moving him here. But what if Miami had said, hey, we'll give you X amount of money just to come on over. You just pass right on through Starkville. We'll pay for the rest of it. Just keep on coming. Right? Because under the rules at the time, they could have done that. But Marcus comes on to Mississippi State, obviously has the big touchdown to close out the ReliaQuest Bowl. It'll always be the Outback to me. But that's how tenuous this thing used to be at times. So everybody said, hey, give us the FAA so we can have some finality to this and everybody knows who's recruitable and who's not. And that process has lasted about 2 years, when now it's already being challenged. And now it's time for our Close with Blair Player of the Day, brought to you by Blair Chandler and our friends at closewithblair.com. That's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR.com. Let me give you Blair's phone number so you have it handy. Save it in your phone as Mortgage Guy. Just make it simple. You may forget the name. You won't forget the need. 601-500-2344. 601-500-2344, right? So save that, because you never know when life's going to throw you a curveball. Or perhaps maybe the dream of home ownership has eluded you, and maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe you had the wrong loan originator. If you're not quite ready, Blair can put you on a path to get you ready. 25 years of experience in this meat grinder of an industry. He knows how to construct loans to give you the best chance for approval. Don't overthink it. This is a life hack. It makes it a lot simpler for you. So when you have a relationship change, a job change, or maybe you just want to get closer to home, let Blair Chandler do some of the heavy lifting for you, and be sure to let him know you heard about him on the Boneyard. You don't have to be a fan of Mississippi State to partake in the wonderful services afforded to you by Blair Chandler, but it doesn't hurt, right? Blair's a Bulldog through and through, season ticket holder in multiple sports, has a place here in town. He rides the wave of Bulldog emotion just like you do. So again, that's closewithblair.com. We're going to go with Destiny McFall. Been a very solid contributor to the Mississippi State women's basketball team. Need a good game from her against Alabama tomorrow. I suspect that the ladies are already in Tuscaloosa. Probably went ahead and made that trip. I can't confirm that, but I believe that's probably the case. We won't travel on game day with the possibility of having some travel concerns over there. But all that understood, Mississippi State, big win over Kentucky last weekend. Did not have the midweek game, so a chance to kind of get our legs under us as we take on Alabama. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But that's your Close the Blair Player of the Day, Destiny McFall from Mississippi State women's basketball. Now, time for today's Top 10 list is always brought to you by Calido Guitars, Calido Guitars.com, a Mississippi State-owned and operated guitar shop out in Lake Jackson, Texas, just south of Houston. They specialize in guitars, but they carry many other stringed instruments, whether it's a banjo, a ukulele, or, I don't know your needs, but they can be fulfilled by the fine folks at KalitoGuitars.com. I've got a guitar from them. I love it. It's a Steve Ibanez, and it is the best sounding and best looking instrument that I have ever owned in my entire life. Got to find more time to play it, but I love it. I've got the gig bag, got the guitar stand, and you can find the great guitars and all of the accessories at Kalito Guitars. And they're going to give you some incentive, right? You can stop by and see their expansive showroom, but if you can't make it out there to see them, this promo code works in person, over the phone, or online. It's promo code BSR. We wanted to keep it simple. It's a promo code you know. That entitles you to a string of discounts. 10% off their already low price. That's a Ken Folks discount. No shipping, no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas. And then they make a 5% donation to the Bulldog Excellence Fund. It's a win-win-win. You win, they win, and Mississippi State wins. And when Mississippi State wins, we all win, right? So whether you're looking for accessories, whether you're looking for a new rig, anything you need, you can find at KalitoGuitars.com. And they're guitar players too. It's a passion for them. It's not just a scenario where they just said, hey, let's open a guitar shop. They play. They do. And it's a guitar player's guitar shop. Be sure and check it out. We've had several Boneyard listeners that have had great experiences. And if you call or stop by, you may speak to Daniel. And while you're there, you get a chance to talk a little Mississippi State sports. This is your guitar shop. Be sure and check it out today, KalitoGuitars.com. So it's our wintry mix, right? Many of you are dealing with something a lot more difficult than we are here in Starkville. We're right there on kind of that line of demarcation between what should be rain and what could be freezing rain, sleet. Ani and his family are already getting tons of snow up there in northwest Arkansas. But around the south, we're going to have varying degrees of the wintry mix. So that's going to be the theme of our top 10 list today, the wintry mix. Number 10, one of the last songs the great Freddie Mercury recorded. It's called A Winter's Tale, and it was inspired by, Freddie just kind of surveying the scene during a winter storm and just was inspired to write this great song. And it's probably one you don't know as well, but is one that is majestic, pardon the pun, shall we say. I think you're going to enjoy that. I think it's a song that maybe you're not as familiar with, that probably you should be. Number 9, a song that we've had on the show before. It's Ace Frehley, and you can blame him for all of this, long hair and tattoos and all that stuff. When I was a kid, man, I thought Ace Frehley was the coolest guy on the planet. Space Ace, man, loved it. My favorite member of Kiss. I've got an Ace Frehley action figure that I bought on a trip one time that I still think they had it mispriced. They didn't know what they had, but it's from the 70s, and I'm very glad to have it. One day Dana walked in and said, hey, where'd you get that? Well, I bought it. I had to have it. And after Ace died, I got a tattoo of Ace from the solo album. This is a track from the solo album, too. And it's ironic, too. There were so many people that thought Gene or Peter, Chris, or even Paul Stanley's solo albums would outsell Ace's, but no. Ace Frehley's solo album was the most well-received of the 4 solo albums. So a track off that album that fits our motif today is Snowblind. I love the guitar on it. I love the punch. I wish they would remaster it. I wish they would. I imagine it would have even more punch with that. Because they played everything live back then. All right, number 8, kind of a cautionary tale, too. It's The Doors' Wintertime Love. Now, many of you may be kind of, let's say, snowed or iced in for a few days. Maybe you have power, the roads just aren't passable, and you got your significant other just kind of laid up in the bed with you, just kind of enjoying some Netflix and chill. So be careful. Be mindful. You might have a new trick-or-treater to deal with in about 9 months. So, not that we're against that. We're big supporters of that activity. But just be mindful as you navigate through this winter storm and your attempts to stay warm. Number 7, a band that I love. I've got some of their lyrics tattooed on my chest in honor of my beautiful bride. It's not one of my favorite songs from this band, but I do like it a lot. It's probably maybe 7 or 8 on my list. But the band used to be called Slaves, and then they changed singers and changed the name. And the Slaves moniker comes from the fact that all these guys were in recovery. And so it was really about kind of being a slave to that grind. Well, they changed singers, and I think it was for the best, to be honest with you. I think the quality of the music has only gotten better as this band's matured. It's Rain City Drive's track Frozen. More on Frozen a little bit later. Number 6, I love this band. I loved them when Ronnie James Dio was the singer, and of course he left and was replaced by Joe Lynn Turner. And for those of you in the 80s that loved music, rock music back then, Joe Lynn Turner also was the singer for Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force for a while. But Joe Lynn replaced Ronnie James Dio in Rainbow. Richie Blackmore obviously was still in the guitar back then, so they hired Joe Lynn Turner away from the band Fandango. You may not be familiar with them, perhaps you should be. But I think this stretch with Rainbow, especially with the album Straight Between the Eyes, is one of the better albums in the catalog. My favorite song on that album, and we've had it on the show before, is Stone Cold. Not Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Stone Cold from Rainbow. I think you'll dig it. If you don't know Rainbow, I encourage you to get to know them. Maybe perhaps put on Rainbow Essentials. I think you'll enjoy that as you travel. All right, number 5. Kind of a sad story, and many of you that are in the modern rock scene or you enjoy modern rock, you'll appreciate the fact that we're including Wayne Static and Static X. They were a riot. Absolutely wild. Kind of came up in the new metal scene for a while and got heavier and heavier and heavier. And sadly, Wayne Static passed away. And it was a drug overdose at the age of 48, way back in 2014. And there was a lot of tragedy that kind of came from all that stuff. It's just one of those things, like his death was so impactful on many people. A lot of people just couldn't deal with it. And but the reality of it is, no matter who you are, where you're from, I would encourage you, when you have issues, that maybe you reach out and talk to somebody. And Wayne was married to, let's just say, an exotic film star, Tara Ray, for a while. And she ended up ending her own life just about a year and a half after Wayne died. She just couldn't deal with it. So I hate to be so morbid about that stuff, but you don't have to live like that. There is help available. But we're going to go with Static X's Cold, because even if we don't have a lot of ice and snow and rain, it's still going to be really cold around the South. Number 4, a band that I've met at Rocklahoma, thanks Mark, and there's not a lot of diversity in the vocal delivery with this band. So a lot of songs, I can't just listen to a playlist of these guys over and over and over. And but I like the band, right? There's not enough range, I guess, in the vocal, where I think it kind of limits what they can do in some respects. But it's Trivium's Silence in the Snow. Silence in the Snow, your number 4 track. Number 3, and one of the reasons I have this band so high, they're very different. Very, very different. Now, this song is very different for them, too. They've toured with a lot of people. The guitar tone and some of the things they do is very innovative. And I don't know that it's fully caught on, but it just kind of changes the way composition works. They just do some really weird stuff. They do. I say weird, and it's weird in the best way possible. Maybe it's more unique is the better term. This is something that's a little different than everything else in the catalog, but it fits what we're shooting for. It's Gojira's Born in Winter. And Gojira is wild. Wild. Number 2, I mentioned we would get back to Frozen. Now, many of you, this is your chance to get revenge, okay? And I say that because for you parents that had to listen to the Frozen soundtrack on repeat for the better part of 2 years, you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't go to the store, You couldn't go to church without putting that on. Whether it was a CD or your playlist or whatever, maybe you grab the aux cord and put it on. Maybe you have Bluetooth, I don't know. But you and I both know that song became a nightmare. So to kind of flip the script a little bit, there's a band on Sumerian Records. It's got dual vocalists, so there's like this screaming guy and there's some melodic part of this. It's a band called Betraying the Martyrs. And they did a wild rock version of Let It Go. And so maybe you jump in the car and say, hey, remember this song? And you put this on. And of course, they won't recognize it until it gets to the chorus. So maybe a little fun way to have a little revenge here. But number one, and I don't know that we've had this song on the top 10 list before. We've had this band several times. One of the greatest rock bands of all time. It's Metallica's Trapped Under Ice at number one. Now, I hope that you never experienced that, right? But a lot of it's just kind of metaphoric, right? You can kind of see what's going on. You can't participate. There's just a lot of stuff to that. And which reminds me too, uno momento, por favor. I saw recently somebody shared, somebody in my Facebook feed, and I've almost reached the point that I want to just like unfriend these people when they share these fake articles. But I know in my heart they just don't know any better. So I'm going to try to educate you a little bit, okay? There was a meme or some story that got shared that James Hetfield from Metallica was critical of like a Super Bowl halftime show or something. It wasn't true. Now I don't know how he feels about Bad Bunny performing at halftime. I don't care who performs. It doesn't make any difference to me, right? But there was this article, and it was all like an AI creation. And they were attributing some false quotes to James Hetfield. And it got shared. And we've talked about some of this stuff with Dak before. You know, Dak has like healed the sick and, you know, walked on water and things like that. And he's been named Man of the Year by Time Magazine. And people want it to be true, so they share it. And so we used to have this deal where, and I give Facebook some credit because the algorithm has kind of caught on to some of these scammers. And they share these images in hopes that you share them to give them greater engagement. And those accounts are monetized, so they make money by promoting false and fake news. And they'd have these images like of a lost dog, a third time trying to find this dog before we take him to the shelter, trying to find his home. And then the picture would be shared in like every state. You know, it just be like that dog really got around. And then there were situations where this guy was missing or whatever. Well, they've gotten smarter with it, and they're flagging that stuff and catching it. One of the sad things I remember is a couple of years ago, they were sharing this picture of this guy that was missing. He actually was missing at one point and was found dead. And so when people begin to share these pictures, as well-intended as they are, they're like, hey, this guy's missing, let's get this dad home. It just re-traumatizes the family, because then you find out the guy, you know, had a car accident, like rolled down a ravine and didn't live. And so I just be mindful of what you do. If it's not a real legitimate media source, right? If it's not, you know, CBS or NBC or CNN or Fox News or whatever, if it's not a legitimate media source, and please don't message me about your debate about what's real and what's not. But like if it's like jbc24.com, that's not a legitimate media site. So chances are you're being had. So I encourage you not to share those things. If Dak Prescott saves a family from a burning building, it's going to be national news. It's not going to be sportskita.com sharing that story, right? It's going to be everywhere. It's not going to be some obscure media source that shares it. You got to understand when you're being had. I'm just trying to educate, inform, and entertain here. So please be mindful and listen, especially boomers. I love you. I do. But the reality of it is sometimes you guys share some stuff that it's just misinformation. And there are people in my generation that do it too. And I hate to be the Facebook police. I say, guys, this is fake. Consider unsharing this. Oh, how do you know? Are you kidding me? Right? Do you really think if Dak Prescott had like bought the diner in his hometown to ensure that his favorite waitress had a job, that wouldn't be all over the news? Do you really think, you know, that JoeBobBilly.com is going to break that news? I mean, come on. Use some context clues here. I love you guys to death, but some of you make my head hurt. I mean, honest to goodness. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out, let us know. Best way to do that is to hit up Roy Samanti on X at Dogmatic67. That's his birth year. You can find our great list on Spotify under that same handle, Dawgmatic67, DAWGMATIC67. And I'm on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. We're going to take a break now and go watch the Bulldogs play Vanderbilt in basketball, and I'll be back with you shortly. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. We love Campus Bookmart. We have for a long time. And why? Because they have the things we want. We want more Mississippi State merch. When it comes time to buy gifts, don't overthink it, right? You know as well as I do, when you buy somebody Mississippi State gear, you're giving them a needful thing. And they're going to open that gift and say, oh, you know me so well. Whether it be that fashionable new quarter zip, the everything you need to detail out your fan cave, things for the car, the office, the home, the pet, whatever, you can find it at Campus Bookmart. If you can't make it to town and see their smiling faces, which I encourage you to do, I get a complimentary hug every time I go in. Maybe that's just me. I don't think so, but maybe it is. But you can shop online at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than 75 bones, absolutely incomplete. And be thinking about those diploma frames. Graduation coming up in just a few months. Great selection of those. A timeless gift available to you from Campus Bookmart. Okay. We got dog walked by Vanderbilt. Very disappointing. I typically don't like to recap games after the emotion, but my emotions of this game were basically exhausted about 5 minutes in. And, the reality of it is we're just not very good. Let's just kind of call it for what it is. What are we, a game out of last place in the SEC? And we'll go play LSU and kind of determine that soon. But, not great, man. Vanderbilt shoots 54% from the field. It's tough to win when the opponent's making every other basket, right? We shot just 34%. Bulldogs 20 of 58 from the field, just 19% from beyond the arc. Vandy a shade better, pretty much at their number, 32%. They shot 91% from the free throw line. We were 65%. We turned it over 17 times. That's up from last ball game, 13. They out-rebounded us 36-34. We did get 9 offensive rebounds, much of that late, kind of in scrub time. They also had 10 steals, especially early on, to kind of set the tone for this one. They also dished out 21 assists to our 7. Bulldogs finished the game without making a shot the last 4 minutes and 20 seconds of the game. We were 1 of our last 11. The game was well decided by then. Well decided. And you go back and you begin to just kind of think about this. We jump out there in the very beginning of this ball game, and it's like, okay, maybe we're here to play. And you find out pretty quick that we're not. It's 2-2, and then next thing you know, you look up, and it's 14-4. We had a chance to kind of cut it back down to single digits, and next thing you know, we're down 17. And from there, it was largely academic. But we're not good in basketball, and that's disappointing, especially considering the money that we have invested in this. We are not getting the return on our investment. Only one Bulldog scores in double figures. Jaden Epps has 14. He was 5'11" from the field. But, man, it's nuts. Josh Hubbard just 2 of 10 from the field, made the one big three, which set a new SEC record for 67 consecutive games with a made three-point basket. Josh has 4 points the rest of the way. Rough. 3 turnovers, handed out 1 assist. Josh just did not have a good game at all. Outside of that, there was not a single player that really had an appreciable contribution offensively. I guess Sergei Makara had 8 points in the game. One of our most effective players, 3 of 4, not shooting it enough, I guess. But with all the turnovers and many of them unforced, it was difficult to find any rhythm. State gets 39 points off the bench. That's a product of us emptying the bench and getting some guys some playing time late. Quincy Boward had one nice play where he backed the guy down and dropped the baby hook on him for his only basket of the game. King Grace again with 8 points in the ball game too. That's back-to-back games for him where he's shown some real signs of life. offensively. But, man, we just simply could not do anything. And listen, Vanderbilt's good, but we shouldn't be this bad. We shouldn't be. 22 points in the paint. Our offense in the post is awful. Awful. We worried about it last year. Went out, got a couple guys in the portal, didn't fix the problem. This year we go out, get some post players, didn't fix the problem. Quincy Ballard was expected to come in and start for us. He doesn't, plays just 11 minutes today. It's not great, man. It's not great. And you all see it the same way that I do. Now, the first thing that I'll tell you, no, we don't need to make a coaching change. It's so easy to be in the middle of all this, and you think, oh, I just want the pain to stop, Steve. I do too. But we have been to 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments. We are not making the tournament this year unless something crazy happens. And we talked about this a couple weeks back. This team has some fatal flaws. The fact that we are so bad defensively just baffles me. It really does. Last year we thought was kind of an outlier because Jan's teams had been so good defensively the first 2 years. That was kind of our identity. We hit the portal looking to improve defense, and we haven't done it. We simply have not done it. And we thought Quincy Ballard would be a rim protector. He can barely get on the floor. We thought Amir Ali would be a potential starter offensively. He plays 8 minutes today, which is close to a season high. We have a lot of money invested in this roster that is contributing absolutely nothing. And like everybody keeps saying, well, we'll figure it out, We're running out of time to figure it out. I don't believe we're going to figure it out. I'm sure we'll win some games here and there. But, man, performances like today simply do not give you any confidence about this season. Again, I absolutely support Chris Jans. I think we have to make some changes within our operation. We've got to evaluate better in the portal because we are throwing a lot of good money after bad players. I don't know any other way to say it. Tyler Tanner absolutely killed us, and he is a phenomenal player. Talked about him a little bit in our preview yesterday that didn't get posted, but 10 of 17 from the floor, 24 points. Duke Miles with 17, and they are very, very handsy, as you guys know. Miles with 7 steals in the game, also had 4 personal fouls, but nobody fouls out for Vanderbilt. Just 19 fouls in the game for them, 8 of them coming from 2 players. So they knew how to defend without fouling. And then they turn those steals into fast break points, 23 in all for Vanderbilt in this game. And, when you lose a game by 32, there's just a lot that you can pick apart here. We're not going to waste a lot of time on this game, but the reality of it is we are not good at basketball. We hoped to be better. And I go back to the beginning of the year. A lot of people said this is Chris Jan's most talented team. And on paper, that might have been the case. But on the court, it is clear this is not the most talented team we have had during the Chris Jans era. I don't think this is on coaching. I think this is on roster management. And I think we made some bad decisions in the portal, and those chickens have come home to roost. And you can't out-coach it. I don't care how great a coach you are, you can't take a mule and win the Kentucky Derby. And that's kind of where we sit right now. All right, so what's next for the Bulldogs? As you guys know, we'll be at Baton Rouge on Wednesday against LSU, and that's a game between 2 teams that are really struggling. And I go back and think about that whole that coaching search. Our final 3 were Todd Golden, Mac Mahon, and Chris Jans. And I thought, hey, there were some people that were kind of against the whole Todd Golden thing, thought he hadn't proved enough. Well, wins a national championship, right? But, man, things at LSU have not been good, not been great. And so things could always be worse, I guess, when you look at it through that lens. But McMahon obviously inherited a bad situation there. After a great run at Murray State, his final year at Murray State, they went 31-3. And so everybody thought, hey, this guy's really beginning to elevate that. He had the one year, the COVID year was a 500 year, but every year beyond that, they were in great situations. They really were. Went to the NCAA tournament 3 times in 4 years. We didn't have the tournament, of course, in 2020. He gets to LSU, and it's 14-19, 17-16, 14-18. So he has not had a winning year in the Southeastern Conference, made the NIT just one time. And you begin to look at kind of where things are as they sit today. LSU 13-6 overall, but 1-5 in the SEC. And I suspect that they're going to struggle to win SEC games. We got to find a way to win that game. Regardless of what March looks like for us, we have to take it game by game. We got back-to-back road games, and we haven't been great on the road. That's one of those things too. We've just been okay. We're 2-2. You win that game, at Texas, and you feel pretty good about life. But we've been a different team since then, and we just simply cannot find a way to find a third score. And now teams are beginning to take Hubbard away from us. State's now 10-10 and lost 5 in a row. 10-10. If I told you beginning of the year we'd be 10-10, 20 games in, you would have never believed that. But that's where we sit. And it's frustrating for all of you guys. And my feelings is that we have been at times too financially invested in men's basketball as of late. And some of you don't want to hear that. I think we just got to be better stewards with our money. You can't keep throwing more and more money out this. We've got to evaluate better. We've got to do a much better job evaluating portal players and getting value from them, because we just have so many of these that just kind of blow up in our face. All right, the ladies will play Alabama on Sunday, barring something unforeseen. And so far in Starkville, it was supposed to start sleeting a couple of hours ago. We haven't had anything yet, but there is supposed to be some precipitation the remainder of the day. Your Bulldogs, of course, knocked off Kentucky last weekend, had the midweek off. 15-5, 2-4 in the SEC, and of course 1-3 on the road. So we have not been a great road team. We'll make the short trip over to Tuscaloosa, see if we can't change that. And this Alabama team at times has had some big moments, currently ranked 23rd in the country. So it's not like we're going up there to play like an Alabama team of old. And there's been some times in recent years they've given us a lot to contend with. But this Crimson Tide team is 17-3 overall. And you say, well, Steve, with that record, well, they've lost 2 straight. They got off to a great start because of a very mediocre non-conference schedule. They did mix in some Power 4 stuff in there and got some wins there that kind of drew some attention. They opened up with a 20-point victory over Florida State. Then they cruised to West Florida and Stetson and McNeese State, Alcorn, Alabama, A&M, Samford, Harvard. They go down to Bahamas and play Harvard in Minnesota. They win the Pink Flamingo Championship tournament down there. They get Kennesaw State. They get Clemson in Tuscaloosa by 24. So, again, that's a Power 4 win. Not sure Clemson's going to contend for the tournament this year. But, again, adding Florida State and Clemson to the schedule, that at least adds a little meat to the bone. But the rest of this is just, not anything to write home about. They nearly double up Louisiana Monroe. Tight game with Jackson State, though. They end up winning at 62-51, but the Tigers hang around for a while. They blow out Sam Houston and Tulane. They get Troy by 18, and then we get into SEC play. And that's when things kind of came into focus. They got absolutely shelled at South Carolina. No shame in that. That's going to happen to a lot of good teams. They get Arkansas 77-48, and then opponent in common, they get Kentucky by 13. They go to Missouri and win a game there 74-63, then lose at Auburn, another opponent in common that we have a victory against, and they lose that game by 4 points, the rivalry game. And then host Tennessee, lose that game by 11. So we're going to have to play a good game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But again, you look at the that home record, at 14-1, just really kind of jumps out at you. You look at that and say, well, you expect that in the Southeastern Conference. You expect teams to be able to kind of handle their home court. And they have, of course. But, you just kind of work through all this. The one loss was the last one, last Sunday. And like the Bulldogs, the Crimson Tide was off in the midweek. So it should be 2 teams that are fresh. So let's kind of get inside the numbers here. Just kind of check, see what we've got to work with here. Learn a little bit more about this Alabama team. Looking at the team numbers, averaging about 72 points a game, giving up about 54. And again, some of that is a product of the non-conference schedule. It's been much different in SEC play. Shooting about 44%, almost 45%, giving up 35%. And again, some of that is playing good defense. Some of that is just simply being the better team against that non-conference schedule. 3-point baskets, they will shoot a few of those. Shot 452 this year, making them about 35% of the time, about 8 a game, giving up about 5. And then good free throw line, right at 73%. It's always a good thing, too. Not getting to the line a whole lot, but when they get there, they typically convert. Rebounding has been a bit of a strength, pulling down almost 40 a game, out rebounding foes by about 7 per. Handed out 14 assists a game, a lot of team basketball here, but they have the ability to turn it over a little bit, too. About 14 per game, and they're forcing right at 15, so it's about a 1 turnover differential. But points off turnovers, they've been a little more efficient than their opponents. We're at 17.5. Well, opponents just right at 11. 167 steals, which works out to be about 8 a game, and then they have 7 against. So not a huge advantage there either way. They will get their hands in the air and block a shot every now and again, about 5 of those per, which is not anything that you've got to necessarily game plan for. Look at the individual player numbers here. Jessica Timmons leads this team with a 15.8 per game average. Also pretty good on the glass, pulling down 88 rebounds. Essence Cody, second leading scorer with 13.9 per game. That's the only 2 Crimson Tide players in double figures, but Carly Weathers is right there, almost at 9.9 points a game. She also leads the team in rebounding, 128 rebounds on the year. The majority of them coming on the defensive end, and offensive rebounding's got to be a big part of this thing for us. Naomi Jones is a part-time starter, but also one of the team's leading rebounders with 110. So they will get on the glass for you. And we mentioned, the three-point shooting. They have a couple of ladies that have over 100 three-point attempts on the year, Timmons being one of them, Weathers being the other. Both of them shooting about the same clip in the 44 percentile there. And then Diana Collins doesn't have the same frequency, but she's shooting about 46%. So they are a team that can score from outside. And, of course, playing in their home arena, you would expect them to probably attempt more shots at home because there's just a comfortability with the rim and the shooting background, all that sort of stuff. But, we're going to have to play well, but it's certainly a game that we can win. I'm sure we'll get their full attention. But, what's interesting about them, too, is they've kind of settled on their starters. Tamaya Scott, Diana Collins, Carly Weathers, I keep saying that, Jessica Timmons have started all 20 games. Essence Cody has 12 starts, and Naomi Jones the other 8. Outside of that, it's just kind of been a rotational thing. So they've got 6 players that make up all 20 of their games as starters. But by and large, it's been the same 4 or 5, particularly every game. And then when Essence Cody doesn't start, she still plays a lot of minutes and still scores at a high efficiency. So a team that we're going to have to go out there and play well, but again, a game that I think we're capable of winning. We can't go over there and turn the basketball over. I'm sure there won't be a ton of attendance there. I don't know how much of a home court advantage there will be with the fans, but a lot of people around here will be watching from home, and we encourage you to do the same thing. Now, the ladies will be back in action on Thursday on the road at Knoxville, Tennessee to take on the number 17 Tennessee Lady Vols. Bulldogs back at Humphrey Coliseum on February 1st to host Missouri. And then from there, it's just kind of, it's kind of pick your poison, right? Down the stretch, we got obviously South Carolina, Texas, and LSU to go. Have the opportunity to climb back maybe into the middle of the pack, maybe in the bottom half of the league towards the top. But we can't drop any games we're expected to win, and we need to win some toss-up games, and that likely starts tomorrow against the Lady Tide of Alabama. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle, bar none, when you bring a large group to town, and you should. You owe it to yourself, not just to your friends and your family. Don't you love getting everybody together? Right, you can be the linchpin in your friend and family group and kind of plan a wonderful trip that everybody will remember forever. It's the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, your favorite city in the known world, right? Come up here and enjoy some of your favorite shops, your favorite restaurants when maybe things aren't quite so busy, or maybe you need the Vegas Clubhouse for, ball game weekend. Yeah, maybe you need to look into that. How cool would that be, right? It's open 365 days a year, 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus, right there off 182 out past the Highlands. Half the drive is just getting to 182. That's how close you are to campus. Now, Google the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. When you do, their Facebook page auto-populates. You can picture all of the amenities available to you and your guest. And I don't think the pictures do it justice. Full-service kitchen, wet bar, back porch area, fire pit area, plenty of parking, which is an underrated amenity, especially when you bring a lot of people to town. You think, where's everybody going to park? No worries. No worries. Lots of peace and quiet. Plenty of places to park. Remember, it's the old clubhouse, right? So there used to be a lot of golfers go out there and swing the sticks, so they had to accommodate that. So you don't have to worry about that. Plenty of parking out there for you. Now, when you do that Google search, some booking options are going to pop up. You can book through Airbnb and VRBO if you want to. Completely up to you. You can. But if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website and use promo code BSR10. That gets you 10% off your stay. We've stayed there. We had a great time. BSR10, the number 10, BSR10. Just by listening to this show, you're saving a little coin at the premier place to stay in the Golden Triangle. You owe it to yourself to make the plan, make the trip, make some memories. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Be sure and check it out today. Okay, as you know by now, Jordan Seaton picked LSU, much to our chagrin. We were never forecasting him here. State obviously fought down to the end. Didn't go the way we wanted, and frankly did not go quite the way I expected. I didn't expect him to come to State, but I thought in the end, Oregon was the one that worried me. I had some people early on that said, Miami's not the rule. I worried about Miami, and then immediately somebody said, hey, a lot of people in the family don't want him going there, a lot of distractions. Makes a lot of sense. LSU came on strong, thought they had him, didn't have him, and ends up getting him. But I was really worried about Oregon late because I was told that Nike was probably going to be involved there and try to work out an endorsement deal that would kind of follow him into the NFL. Made good sense to me. He didn't go to Oregon. He went to LSU. So in many respects, we're kind of done with marquee players in this portal. There's not any left, right? We got a couple spots to fill, obviously, to kind of fill out the 105, and we'll take our time with that. We're not just going to take a couple bodies, plus we're already up against drop ad dates. We're already past that. So I don't think you're going to see a late addition until maybe we get later, right? Because guys will still have the opportunity to transfer throughout the spring. They can sign their financial aid agreement and close out the process, or at least that's what we believe, and there's going to be more on that soon. But there may be some guys, obviously, that can play special teams for us, or maybe a young guy that replaces a guy that we processed out that we can bring into the roster in the summer. There's no spring window, but the guys are in the portal now. We'll still have the opportunity to sign. It is too late for anybody else to enter the portal. But there are still thousands of players in the portal looking for a college home. They'll finish out where they are this spring, and then we'll kind of move forward. But what's interesting, you may not know this, when a player enters the portal, the school is under no obligation to continue to pay aid. Did you know that? Maybe you didn't. It's true. Some schools do, but they're not required to. So that's an interesting aspect of it. Now, Mississippi State picked up, Jaden Rashada a couple days ago, quarterback. You may remember him. Made some headlines. He was committed to Florida, supposedly had a deal through like the Gator Collective. Things kind of went awry. He leaves, files a lawsuit for breach of contract, ends up at Arizona State, doesn't win the job. Sam Leavitt does. He transfers from there to Georgia to be a backup. Doesn't win the primary backup job, transfers again to get on the field, goes to Sacramento State, wins the job there, gets hurt the first game, and just kind of played sparingly the rest of the way. So he'll come in basically to provide depth for Mississippi State. Very athletic guy. He's got some upside. It just hasn't come together for him in college, and he's a guy that Levy's known a long time. Camario is your starter. But we have kind of reconstructed this depth chart behind him. Kamari will be the only returner from last year's quarterback room. A.J. Swan, of course, now on campus. Rashada working his way in. Not sure when he's going to report. Just don't know yet. So we'll see. And then, of course, Bertie McQuarter shows up. And so speaking of those guys, too, I just want to run it back for you here. We got word today. State, now that the Seton sweepstakes is over, was prepared to share with us the early enrollment guys. And we'll do that for you now, just to kind of bring you up to speed. Now, the number of early enrollments is impressive. It is. And now, a lot of guys, of course, plan to do that. They work to do that as underclassmen to ensure they can graduate in December and go through spring practice. So as it stands right now, Mississippi State with 20 enrollees from the high school and junior college ranks. 20. Those guys will all go through spring practice. Some of them went through some bowl practices. They were kind of coy about sharing that with us, but you transfer guys obviously are either in or working to get in. I think the only one right now that we're waiting on in that respect is Rashada. Everybody else should be good to go, and yes, they are. So Rashada is the only one at this point that hadn't been cleared and to enroll. But working through your high school stuff here, I got to double check on one guy too, because I thought Hayden Chambers, I can't remember if he told me he was going to be early enrollment or not, but he's fine. But of the 20 guys that are there from the high school and junior college ranks, Braylon Womack, obviously a guy that was a corner, expected to play safety. Zion Cotton from Grenada, tight end / X receiver. Defensive lineman Tico Crittenden, who I think was, because of all the rush, right, at the end, I don't know that people fully appreciate what a good player he is. He's 6'4", 300. He'll be a natural 3-tech. I think he has a chance to be a good player for State. Of course, Micah Nickerson flipped back to State. He's on campus. I remember talking to him after the All-Star game. He was so excited to be able to be here in January. JT Jaden Taylor, of course, is here. Kimion Henderson Jr., another great late add, a guy that helped lead Carthage High School to another state championship. If you watch the film of that game, I think you're going to be really excited about him. Leon Knoll Jr., of course, a guy that originally committed to Nebraska, ends up flipping to State late. He's on campus. Cameron Brown. Great story with Cameron, obviously. He came to one of those early junior days last year, and when he committed, I thought, there's no way this kid's going to stick. There's no way. Not only does he stick, he doesn't take any other visits, he doesn't talk to anybody else, and he gets his grades together, and he's able to enroll early. Think about that for a second. Like, this guy had never been to Mississippi State before, commits on the spot at the basketball game, and now a year later, he's in school at Mississippi State. It did not cause us any trouble at all, and had some other opportunities. So I'm eager to see what he can do. Of course, Jaden Hill is here. No big surprise there. Dalton Toothman, of course, Jaden Ross. Both of those guys, big offensive linemen from down on the coast. Excited to have both of them. Colby Barrett, safety from the Baylor School in Chattanooga, is here. We mentioned Brody a bit earlier. Luke Hutchinson, tight end. More of an H-back, more so than a tight end, a guy that his dad played with John Cooper in the National Football League. He's here. Caleb Morris, who was an Alabama All-Star, also now on campus. Cooper Crosby, no surprise there. A couple of junior college guys, too. Matt Mayfield and Dre Riley. Matt, of course, from Colin, former Mississippi State commitment. Loved Coach Bumpus, stayed through the process. And then Dre Riley, of course, a guy that I had a chance to see play in person this year. Saw both of those guys play. Dre is a guy that I think can help us more than maybe people feel like. Adam Land, of course, tight end, recovering from a injury. So we don't expect anything from him this year. And then Kyle Rushing, of course, the long snapper from Parkland Academy, he also is enrolled. Was not officially a signee, but now he is enrolled as an early enrollment guy. So where does that leave us? Well, again, outside of Rashada, from the high school and junior college ranks, there's Chris Addison, another late addition that came after Lebby's signing day press conference. Committed to Michigan State, flips to Mississippi State on signing day. And I think sometimes we forget how impactful that signing day was. Zion Crumpton, a guy that was absolutely electric, had a great Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game, played quarterback in high school just as an athlete, kind of having his hands on the football.
I think you're going to be happy with him. Jaden Creation may have been the best football player on the high school level that I saw in person last year. Saw him against Ridgeland. Ridiculous, man. Made the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. Got injured in practice, just minor, but not a December grad. But he's a guy that'll probably join the team sometime midsummer. Antavius Watts is a guy early on. And I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised that we were able to kind of keep him as quiet as we did. Watching his film early on, you're like, how does he only have these G5 offers? So maybe there's some things that we see that other people don't, but the film is really good. He's not the biggest guy. He's right at 6 foot, 185 pounds, but he will strike you. Camden Capehart, obviously going to work through the Texas spring track season there. Would have loved to have had him here early, but you're not expecting him to play this year anyway. So he'll go for a third consecutive state championship in the 100 meters. Dylan Steen out of St. Thomas Aquinas, obviously the younger brother of Blake Steen, is a guy that'll be here in June. Terrell Johnson Jr., another guy too that let us know pretty early, just couldn't get it together. He's a good student, but they couldn't put a path together and him to graduate early. Davin Young from Theodore High School, another guy that we saw play in person this year, will be a June enrollment guy. Kyson Shepard, the offensive lineman there, remember him from Germantown High School there outside of Memphis. The Red Devils ends up going to junior college out in Texas, then transfers to East Mississippi. Well, there's rules against that, kind of dating back to the Jackie Sherrill years. So Kyson's going to redshirt this year. He'll work with the team, probably a scout team guy, and then be in a situation where he can challenge next year. Needs to kind of get at a better playing weight, but he's a big, massive guy. But I think the redshirt year will be good for him, and so that's just kind of something to watch. And of course, Hayden Chambers, we think he is the kicker of the future once Kyle Ferry finishes up here at Mississippi State. Hayden Chambers, one of the highest-rated kickers in the country according to Cole's Kicking, and they are probably the most reputable of the kicking services. And so, hey, I think we're in a good shape there. But to have 20 of your 30 traditional signees already on campus is really good. Not just for this year, not that we expect a lot of high school guys to contribute this year. I think Womack might. We'll see how things go. Maybe Cotton. We'll see. But I think getting these guys in, getting them in your strength and conditioning program, giving them a chance to get ahead academically is really good. So, again, 20 of the 30 traditional signees already here, and then 23 of your 24 transfer guys already here. And so you can kind of begin to do the math there. That's 43 Bulldogs going through spring practice that weren't part of the team last year, right? So, again, kind of a makeover. It's a 105-man roster, and we did do a good job on the retention side, but we should have no issue filling out the 105, just trying to find some value. And, again, things kind of shift, right? So, like right now, everybody wants you to go through spring practice. And so the players are like, hey, well, I need, $400,000. And maybe you don't think they're worth $400,000. So you just say, hey, I can find the same player at a better price range. And there's some guys out there, obviously, that'd be willing to come for just a traditional scholarship just to continue their education and their playing careers. So you don't flinch for a guy that's going to be a back-of-the-roster guy. And that's not to be critical of them, but you're not going to go make a big investment in them. You wait this thing out. And then you get to the end of spring, and now all of a sudden you start saying, okay, you go back to that same kid. Well, nobody's been willing to pay him $400,000. He may be willing to come for scholarship and books, or maybe he wants to come for $50,000, right? So the schools hold the leverage once you get through spring enrollment. That's a different scenario than we've had previously because we've had, the two transfer windows for the last couple of years. Well, now you can still sign guys post-spring, but those guys have had to sit in there and sit in there and sit in there and wonder if they're ever going to play football again. So at that point, there's no negotiating power. You can say what you want, but there's going to be a lot of players in a similar situation with similar ability that can fill the same need. And maybe it's just being a special teams guy. Maybe it's being a depth guy. And at that point, you've the promises of your agent from November It was like, oh, yeah, I got this school and this school, they're willing to pay you. Well, all of a sudden, that goes out the window when you're faced with the reality of, I may not be able to play at all, or I may have to go somewhere I don't want to go play. So if I can make a deal with an SEC school to continue my career and my education, I'm going to jump on that. So you save some money in that respect on players that maybe aren't expected to make a major contribution. And quite frankly, you shouldn't be making a big financial commitment to them anyway. As we've talked about, we've seen kind of a shift in the last 12 months at Mississippi State where, it used to be a situation that everybody got something, now you're kind of in a situation where, like, you're the top half of your roster. Like, you're spending 75 to 80% of your money on like 50 players. And then the rest of it is distributed. And again, some guys get nothing. Some guys get what traditionally everybody got, right? They get their scholarship books, room, board, meals, all that good stuff, and now you get a little bit of a stipend check. So you're not totally broke. But there's plenty of players out there that are willing to play under those terms. Say, I don't command enough NIL. I'm not going to let NIL drive my career. So, and again, we've only got a couple spots left to fill. So we'll be able to do that. And I think you do it probably from a best prospect available for the best price. I think State will probably take another defensive back and probably an outside backer, maybe an edge type if you could find him. There's been a lot made about the edge, and I think in some ways too, the way that some of that was kind of rolled out and presented kind of maybe was a bit of misinformation. We wanted the best available defensive lineman. We'd have preferred an edge. It's not exactly, I think, how some people characterize it to be. I can tell you, Williams, the kid from Florida State, Zach Arnett absolutely loves that guy. So we'll see how he develops and what he can bring to the table. But I think we did exceptionally well defensively from an athletic point of view, from a potential point of view. You got some guys with some production. You got some other guys that got more potential than production. But I think the mad scientist that Zach Arnett is, especially these guys that he already has a working knowledge of, I expect us to be much better on defense next year, much better, because of the chaos that Arnett's going to bring. And he knows the guys that fit his system. And so remember, that was the big thing in 2020 when Arnett, everybody said, oh, Rocky Long called all the plays. Arnett wasn't the guy. And then we had to sign him to a contract extension in the middle of the year to ensure he stayed here. I got a lot of faith in Zach Arnett as a DC. I got a lot of faith in Zach Arnett to shop for some of the vegetables and the ingredients for his own defense. And the offense benefits from having a better defense, right? You get more opportunities. You get an opportunity to get a shorter field. And so I think all of that matters. The left tackle spot, could we have done better? You probably. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and cry because we didn't get the number one offensive tackle in the portal. But we've got to do a better job of closing some of these situations out. I go back to the beginning of the Levy era. Dylan Gabriel goes in the portal, and we're hearing, hey, we got a shot here, and then he ends up going to Oregon. So when we have personal connections, we've got to close some of these things out. And, but we're in a much better situation, financially since then, but so is everybody else. So all of it is very relative to that. But we need a win. It's kind of the whole chicken and egg thing, right? It's like, well, you got to win on the recruiting trail first. But you got to have something to sell. And then there's, of course, a lot of guys out there with 1 year left. Those guys want to go win. They don't want to be part of a rebuild. So given the opportunity, you're like, hey, I can go play in a packed house stadium and play games that matter. That's something we're having to contend with. So that's not an excuse. That's just the nature of the beast. So we'll see what happens as we move forward. But, I feel good about the portal class. Not great. I feel good. I would have felt better maybe one more tackle because, Brandon Snagall, we take him. And there was some reluctance at times to take him. And I don't know if there were a lot of guys that played left tackle in the portal that can play in the Southeastern Conference. So we're about to find out. And it still blows my mind Javen James ends up going to Alabama. Crazy. I'm glad we play him next year. If you hadn't done so, go to dutynoblebook.com. You can get signed copies of all my sports titles, of course. That's Flim Flam, Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs, Dog Pile, The Dude, and the personal memoir, When the Bottom Falls. If you're in recovery, need to be in recovery, you know somebody that may benefit from just a great comeback story, that book may be for you. Come float with us at True West Floats by Starkville. Time is kind of running out, too. If you buy a membership in the month of January, you get unlimited floating for the next 30 days. How cool is that, right? And if you're a member, you can bring a friend to float for the very first time for free. If you're a member, even if you're just a monthly basic member, you can book an appointment and then bring a friend for free and let them try it. That's a great benefit. Dial 662-268-7601. You can speak directly to my lovely bride, Dana. She can answer any questions you have about floating or about those specials. And they're running kind of a pop-up 50% off sale through 247 Sports over at genespage.com. Be sure and come check it out. Come join us. Get the most comprehensive and up-to-date coverage of Mississippi State that the world has ever known over at genespage.com. We've got some big things coming in the year ahead, and we want you to come be a part of that. And again, I can't wait for college baseball. I cannot wait for college baseball. Can I say it again? I cannot wait for college baseball. What are we, 3 weeks away? 3 weeks away from taking that series clincher against Hofstra. But listen, I want to sweep through this whole, I understand there's probably some games out there at times that may be a little bit dicey. But, man, I'm like all of you. I'm just so ready to be great at something. And I feel great about this team. I feel great about this team having an opportunity to get to Omaha. And it's been, again, really back-to-back years in many respects. It's been challenging, right? You go back, we won 2 games in football in 24. Terrible, right? Had some injuries. Basketball underachieved. The women probably were the shining moment. Of course, the soccer team was great too. But among the big three, we don't host a regional again. We lose a regional. There's a lot to all that, right? And so you look at it this year, football was a little bit better. Maybe not what we hoped to be, but a little bit better. But most people thought we'd be 5-7, 6-6. Thought we'd take a step forward. We did do that, and that's easy to say in August. But, man, when you get to the end of it, it's like, oh, we missed so many opportunities, right? Men's basketball is underachieving, and, again, the women kind of being, something we can kind of get excited about. But, I want to have a season where Mississippi State is feared, right? Where everybody looks up and I really don't want to play those guys. And I think maybe we're about to do that. This fan base needs that, where there can be, not the hope to win, but the confidence to win pretty much every time out, right? That's a great feeling, and I hope we all get to feel it again soon. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.